Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I certainly want to take this opportunity because a lot was said. And I don't know whether it's my misunderstanding or whether there's an over-expectation by some members in this House as to what they expect that this bill is going to be able to achieve. This is a bill to simply create a registration for real estate agents. And before I begin, Mr. Speaker, I think it's important for me to clarify because I keep hearing the member from Castries East speak very often, almost every House sitting, Mr. Speaker, about what he presumes to be my anger and my disappointment in losing the election. I want to let the member know, please don't lose any sleep for me, because I'm certainly not angry, not disappointed, and I certainly trust the will of the people. But I have to say to you, Mr. Speaker, is when I see the policies and the actions of this government for the last 4 years, I think I can join in the voice of many other solutions that are angry and are concerned. The fact that they got a 6 for a 9 when they went to the polls. But again, like the member from Castries has indicated, we'll let the poll make that final determination. I'm happy to hear he's so confident that he's going to win 17 not. Again, for a person who says that he trusts democracy, he seems to be presuming that the people of this country are very satisfied with their policies, Mr. Speaker. I said they had another member of the House, Mr. Speaker, and he spoke specifically of resemblance in his presentation. You know, Mr. Speaker, I have a person that I know and the kind of character that he is. I think that many people have made reference to him in the past. And his characteristics are very reminiscent of some of the behavior that I saw displayed in the House today. And I think the name that they've given that person is El Guapo. But I let that speak for itself, and who wants to be able to understand that, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, the member from Castries Southeast made some points that were very bizarre. And I had to reread the explanatory notes as to where does he think that in this act that the selling of land is going to be involved as part of their regulatory obligations. I mean, when you go through the act and you see what is the functions of the board: to consider and determine an application for a license to practice a real estate business, to issue a license with or without conditions for the practice of real estate business, to keep and maintain a register of real estate brokers and real estate agents licensed under the Act, to make internal rules governing its procedures subject to the approval of the minister, to cooperate with government ministry departments or statutory body responsible for the enforcement of the laws of St. Lucia relating to the practice of the real estate business. He then went on, Mr. Speaker, because that's all it is. There's nothing else. This idea where he brought in the Bonanza land issue. I mean, I know that we have a provision in our standing orders, Mr. Speaker, that we're not supposed to speak about things that are in court. And when we talk about the 15 court cases I have, Mr. Speaker.
Remember, just let me clarify that you're referencing. No, I'm not coming to that. I just want to make reference to, I believe you're referencing member 35-2. There is no standing order which prevents a member of Castries Central. There is no standing order which prevents this House from debating a matter that is before the courts. What the standing order says is that if, in the opinion of the presiding officer, it will speak to the determination or somehow influence it, that is when the speaker must intervene. But it does not speak to that you cannot reference a matter in court. Just wanted to clarify that.
No, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm happy for the elucidation on the point. I was not in any way suggesting that he didn't have the right to reference it. Okay. I was saying that he thinking that this bill is going to have in any way prevented the minister and the housing board from doing what they did. I mean, he went on to talk about who the land was sold to, that a person that we said was a non-entity, right? The fact is that we now know in a public forum that the board of the National Housing sold the land to Reno Gajada, never to give to Eugene. We know that. That's in the minutes of the board meeting. Okay? So, Mr. Speaker, the fact is that this bill would not have in any way prevented that from taking place. This doesn't speak to that. I don't know where that came from, how that becomes part of the discussion. Only he would be able to explain to us, Mr. Speaker, what that has to do with it. The fact is that I do have 15 court cases, but not all those court cases were initiated by me. So in fact, the Banans case, which will be coming up very shortly in the courts, was initiated by the member from Castries Central. I have a court case that was initiated by the member from Castries Southeast. So when we talk about 15 and I like litigation, I am not the person who looks like the litigation, but certainly as a leader of the opposition, when I think that we have written to the government, we have tried to talk to government officials about dealing with certain issues, CIP being one of them, and there is no response. When the member could come to the House today, Mr. Speaker, and again say that he's answered the questions. He gave a statement in this House previously. He answered no questions. He went to meet with the Chamber of Commerce. He answered no questions. In fact, if anything, Mr. Speaker, and I don't want to cause any reputational damage, further reputational damage that he's caused to himself, but the fact is one couldn't say that he lied. Because when he was saying that there was not 11,000 files, we now see in the contracts that have been in the public domain, copies of which I have here, and I'm happy to make for the House, to be available for the House, records of the House. In the contract, it says, in the case of the hotel project, that they were given 5,000 files. All we're asking for is explanation, Mr. Speaker, a simple explanation. Why? Why will you take a hotel that's costing $300 million and that we had given them previously $210 million in citizenships? Why would you have increased it to $1 billion? Why, Mr. Speaker? Why would you do that? And then to make matters even worse, Mr. Speaker, you appoint Galaxy as a promoter. And as a promoter, pay them a commission. And the commission is...
Member for Microsoft, I'm trying to understand the nexus between the bill before us and the CIP provision. A fleeting comment, yes, but you're going into a detail that does not in any way connect with the bill before us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I have to say to you, Mr. Speaker, I'm a little bit confused because on the previous bill, the member from Castries Central never, in fact, addressed the bill. And in fact, I kept on whispering to you.
Why they didn't address the bill? Among the reasons I did not stop him is because he was responding to comments you made in your debate, which is what the debate is about. If you open the door, he is free to respond. But I still try to guide him back to the bill. But I could not stop him because he was responding to comments you made. Now, you have responded to comments made by the member for Castries Southeast. That's fair. But the comments made by the member for Castries South in relation to CIP bear no connection to the bill before us. So, member for Castries Central, please. Member, please continue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So the member spoke about the Bonanza land. So I assume I'm free to use that as an example. Right? And so we have a situation where a piece of land, Mr. Speaker, a valuable piece of land, was sold by the National Housing Corporation for $2.7 million. A piece of land that never went to for bid. In fact, Mr. Speaker, that there is information to show that in 2013, a valuation was done on the land for $6.7 million. Okay? $6.7 million, Mr. Speaker. Same land, Mr. Speaker.
Tell us about the DSA. Tell us about DSA. Tell us about the more. Tell us about Cabo.
Yes, please.
Members, please allow the Leader of the Opposition to proceed.
Am I free to respond?
No, these
We've
were
opened up the debate further.
these were obiter comments.
So don't take them.
The record, the member for Castries Central is not on the record. I didn't even hear what he said. So proceed, member.
Well, Mr. Speaker, just in case your audience outside heard it, I'm very happy to, at any time, answer the questions about DSH. Anytime. In fact, the government should be able to answer them because they have all the contracts. So they would be fully aware of what is in the contracts and actually what has transacted. But in the case of Bonanza land, Mr. Speaker, the land was sold for $2.7 million. The member from Castries North, along with a senior executive member of SLASPA, signed affidavits to say that SLASPA was never interested in the land. Well, the evidence that was provided in the case actually shows that that's not true. It shows that SLASPA was interested in purchasing the land. And there's a lot of evidence to confirm that, including the minutes of the meetings of National Housing. So, you know, how this bill would have resolved that issue is, I'm perplexed. Because this is not about a valuation of lands. This is about registering. This is about registering real estate agents and creating a code of conduct for the real estate agents. That's what this is about. The member spoke about the Daher Mall and went into some diatribe that I fail to even begin to understand what he was talking about. A very simple transaction. You had a building that was owned by the state. I mean, the member from Vieux-Fort South is here. When he came back into government in 2011, he chose to take a larger loan, and included in that loan was to pay and purchase the Daher Mall. Up until that time, the Daher Mall loan was on the mortgage of the building, meaning that the bank was prepared to lend the money to the company that owned the building, and the bank was prepared to lend the money to rehabilitate the building to make it operational on the basis of the value of the building. I have no difficulty with what the member from Vieux-Fort South did. If he chose to purchase the property at that point, that's fine. But when we came back into office, it was an asset of the state, a non-performing asset of the state. And we purchased the land originally for $10 million US. And that $10 million US also included the land in Union. And what we did, $10 million US is what the land was purchased for, the property was purchased for. And so the decision was to sell the ground floor to a separate company.
Member for Castries Central.
Mr. Speaker,
What is the point of order?
that the member is misleading the House. The Daher Mall, I don't know where he was then, but I was part of the government when the Daher Mall was purchased. It was purchased for more than $10 million, in excess of 20 million US, and he sold it for 5 million US. It was and I can get the record. It was purchased for in excess of 20 million US dollars. and he sold it for $5 million US. But I will make my contribution, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member Castries. But you do have an opportunity to respond in your contribution.
Yes, I will.
Proceed, Member.
Thank you. Not only does he have an opportunity to respond to it here, Mr. Speaker, but the government show that he has on Thursday night, because I have to presume, I must believe that the comments that he's making on the show, Mr. Speaker, has the full endorsement of the Prime Minister, because many times he's made reference to say that he's speaking on behalf of the Prime Minister. So I assume that he will have that opportunity on his show to be able to
Mr. Speaker.
Member Castries Central.
Again, the member is misleading the House. I have never, and that is the kind of looseness with which he speaks. I have never ever said I am speaking on behalf of the Prime Minister. I have never said so. I'm asking him to provide the proof or withdraw it.
Member Castries East.
Mr. Speaker,
Member Castries
Mr.
Central.
Speaker, that's not a point of clarification. Mr. Richard Frederick is a big man.
Member, you shall not refer to members by their names.
Mr. Member Castries is a big man. Eh? Now, I speak for myself. Now, if the member of Castries Central speaks for me, but once he speaks the truth, it's okay.
Member from Mico South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the fact is that the building was never purchased by government. The building was purchased by a company, and the asset was put into that company. I remember it very specifically. Seriously.
Members.
And I
Member for Castries Central. This is not a debate we ought to have. The lease on the property in question is already a document of this House. So it is easily available for it. So let's not debate things that are already documents of the House and can be easily referenced by a call to the clerk. So let's do it. Thank you. Proceed, Member for Mr.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And the amount that was paid was 27 million EC or 30 million EC. They're one of those two, but it was certainly in that vicinity, Mr. Speaker. So the fact is that the ground floor of the building was sold for $5 million, Mr. Speaker. And the developer, who is the same developer, Mr.
Mr. Speaker, again.
Member for
Agreeing
Castries.
on a point of order, Mr. Speaker, I urge you. I really, really urge you. There are persons listening. There is a deed of sale for that property. The leader of the opposition keeps on misleading members of the public and running away from factualities by saying that the ground floor was sold for $5 million. I beg to basically elucidate him. Unless a building is registered under the Condominium Act, part thereof cannot be sold.
Member Castries, let me just add that this matter has already been litigated in this House, and it was the conclusion of this House that there was no such information regarding the sale
Of ground
a
floor.
part of the House. So we can move on that, member. That is already on the record. There is no indication in the lease that was made a record of this House that there is any sale of any part of the property. So
Thank you very much.
We can
but
proceed
this-
on that.
I would like...
Member, I have moved on.
yeah,
Let's
but
move.
I want you to correct him because he keeps repeating it.
No, member, I have ruled
Very well.
that the House has itself ruled and agreed that there is no document before this House where a part of the building was sold. So, member from Mico South, you shall refrain from making that comment.
Well, Mr. Speaker, with the greatest amount of respect, I cannot refrain from speaking to what
There is no respect. I have ruled, you just move on.
with the greatest amount of respect, Mr. Speaker, I cannot and I will continue to say
Well,
what
if
is a
you
factual
cannot
feature.
abide by my ruling, you cannot speak. It's as simple as that. This debate has gone on in this House on the question of the lease. It was made a document of the House. There is nothing in the lease document which was brought to the House which pertains to the sale of a part of that building. That was litigated here, and I will not allow it to be relitigated because it's against the standing orders.
So again, Mr. Speaker, I don't know that you are in fact a judge, and I've said that several
I have
times.
said to you, I am the judge in this house. And I'll say it again, I am the judge in this house. I don't make the rules, I apply them. And I have made a ruling. And just in response to the member for Castries South, the matter was raised by the member for Castries South East, so he is at liberty to respond to it. But he has to respond in a manner that is consistent to what is before this house. And if you're not going to abide by my ruling, I will not allow you to continue.
Well, Mr. Speaker, on that basis, I will respect your decision, but what I will certainly do with your permission, Mr. Speaker, is to actually bring the document back to you and sit down with you and show exactly where the clause is that the ground floor was sold
Remember,
for $5
you
million
were
US
present
dollars.
when the debate took place. I am not the house. Bringing matters to my attention is immaterial. The matters are debated here. I merely adjudicate over the debate. I don't make decisions for the house. So telling me what you think, what am I supposed to do? Come and tell the house that you convinced me? That is of no moment. So please proceed, member.
Well, Mr. Speaker, you're in fact using that evidence of your interpretation of what the contract says in order to prevent me from speaking what is the truth.
Mr. Sergeant, can you ask the clerk to produce the lease for me, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very grateful for your willingness to bring the lease up, and I'm happy to show you the clause. On the meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, the member also brought up the HIA airport and the hospital, and speaking about a PPP and how this act is somehow going to have helped or justify the government's decision.
He didn't say that.
What did he
What
say?
he said was there is ample evidence to indicate that airports are better done by PPPs and hospitals by the state. He never made any reference to the statement to that bill. He did not.
So you mean the member from Castries Southeast would have stood here and made a presentation, Mr. Speaker, and somehow extracted from the air HIA and a hospital and speak about PPPs and bolts, and that was not instigated by his interpretation of this act?
He's telling you his words. He simply said that there is evidence to indicate that airports are better by PPP and hospitals are better by the state. That's all he said.
No, my understanding, Mr. Speaker, and again I stand to be corrected. My understanding
I just corrected you, so forget your understanding.
I'm sorry. I heard it for myself. He said that
member from Miku South,
a licensed real estate agent would have prevented and would have guided the government to do the
member
right
from
thing.
Miku South, he did not say that. And I have ruled, do not proceed along those lines.
So maybe if your memory is better than mine, Mr. Speaker, you can help me as to explain where, so I can be guided in my response. How did the issue of the HIA and the PPPs with a hospital come into the debate? Because I want to make sure I'm accurate.
But may I
in my
suggest
response.
to you that you just respond to the comments he made? If you disagree with his premise that a PPP, an airport is better by PPP, and that a hospital is better by direct contract, make that response. Do not make the connection with the bill because he did not.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So I'm so guided. So here it is that we now have had an experience with the GPH, which is, I don't know what you want to call it, but similar to what the government had proposed to do with HIA. And we now have history on our side. I don't know, Mr. Speaker, maybe the Minister of Finance or the Minister of Airports can tell us how much money currently is in the lockbox of the airport. Because my understanding is we're talking well over $250 million. We also were told by the members on the opposite side while they were in opposition that when COVID came, that me in particular was the only person that believed that tourism was going to come back, and specifically in that comment cited the HI Airport contract to say, here's an example why we should not have done it. But the fact is, what he forgot to tell everybody is, in fact, there was enough money to have carried us through the COVID in order to be able to pay the loans. And here's the truth. The truth is, by the government of St. Lucia entering into the arrangement which we did, which was to borrow the money through the Taiwanese, and I want to clarify something again, Mr. Speaker. OECC was brought in to supervise and manage the construction projects. And they were brought in because they are partly owned by the government of Taiwan. And given the amount of money that we were borrowing from Taiwan, OECC was brought here not only to supervise the HIA airport, but they were also brought in to supervise St. Jude's Hospital, and they were brought in to supervise the road construction that we were undertaking. And what does that supervision mean? So in the case of HI Airport, Mr. Speaker, OECC put everything out to tender and worked in collaboration with SLASPA and also the consultants that were hired by the government, a company from Miami. So, Mr. Speaker, this idea that because of the program that we did and because of OECC and that nothing was put out to bid, it had been, Mr. Speaker. All the things were put out to bid. All the road projects were put out to bid. HI Airport had been put out to bid. In fact, when we did the foundation, there were several bidders, Mr. Speaker. The member from Castries East wants to entertain himself because he wants to believe what he's perpetuating, the propaganda that he's perpetuating to all of you, and certainly attempting to do to the people of St. Lucia. The reality is that has not been the case, Mr. Speaker. And for the member to suggest that somehow a PPP program at this point, Mr. Speaker, would be equivalent to a good deal for the government is absurd. The fact is, what we're doing right now is working and has worked if it had not been for the impediments, false allegations that were being put in by this government, Mr. Speaker. That's the reality. And the fact is, when we look at the GPH deal, which is also, I don't know, PPP, I don't know what you want to call it, how can you have a situation where one of the first countries to have actually built a dedicated cruise ship facility in CARICOM was St. Lucia? In 1981 is when Point Seraphine was built. 1981. We built the commercial side of it, and they built the port side of it. This government had started, and we finished it, to build the extension of the berth at Point Seraphine. That was done by SLASPA. So you're telling me now that we're going to give a third party a concession to collect all of the revenue that we were getting for the ports, the $6.50, Mr. Speaker? Give them all. Allow them to collect the whole thing. And then turned around and increased it to $12, Mr. Speaker. And that GPH is getting $10 to do what, Mr. Speaker? Are those the kinds of PPPs that we want to enter into? Those are the kinds of concessions that we want to be able to enter into? Ones that are robbing the state of its assets? Can you imagine if SLASPA, instead of getting $2.50, was able to obtain $10? What SLASPA would have been able to do?
So why did you do it?
Mr. Speaker?
Why?
Mr. Speaker, during COVID and the discussions with the cruise lines, we had already come to a partial agreement that we were going to increase the tax to $12. There was no need to do what we did. And you know what's the most egregious part? And if that's how this government is going to do PPPs, then we all should be very concerned. It wasn't even put out to tender. It wasn't to say, hey, are there people who are going to be receiving this money who want to be able to get more?
Honourable Member, just a minute. I don't have any particular anxiety to interrupt any member, but as you know, there's a cardinal rule. It is summarized in one word: relevance. So while you may have some reason to proceed for what I may describe as a frolic of your own, it is nevertheless fundamental that you link it very closely with the debate itself, that is the bill before you, so that you maintain the integrity of the rule that requires relevance. Please proceed, member, bearing that admonition in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This is why I was at pains with the Speaker, not to say you're not the Speaker at this point, but the previous Speaker, to understand what the member from Castries House East had said. Because I was trying to find I was trying to find the relevance in him bringing up PPPs, HIA, hospitals, and everything else. And I'm sorry that the relevance really comes in, because if we're going to talk about PPPs, GPH is one of the more recent PPPs that we have. And so do we have with the halls of justice, of which, again, I don't understand what it is. But I don't know, again, and that's why I was asking the question, Mr. Speaker. Where did the member come up with this, given this is a bill, and a bill to discuss the licensing of real estate? And how did he think that this bill was in somehow going to have influenced a better decision? I was told by the Speaker he didn't. He simply brought it up. He did not intercede and ask for the relevance of it, and therefore it became part of the debate. I apologize, Mr. Speaker. If you want to correct that, then I'm happy to take that into consideration.
No, please proceed, member. But I just want to emphasize that that an error if an error may have been committed before, you can't repeat the error yourself and justify the continuation of your own error. So all the admonition is, remember the requirement of relevance, and stick to that, please, so that in whatever comments you make, the links between your comments and the bill before you must be very obvious and real. All right, but please proceed.
Absolutely, and on that's again why I sought clarification, Mr. Speaker, because I was confused myself on the issue. But the fact is here it is, an example of a PP. I'm not so sure, Mr. Speaker, if we are to bring relevance into it, how licensing real estate agents in any way would have or could have influenced the decisions that were made. It's perplexing. I think that when you have bad policy at the government level, I'm not so sure creating a real estate board or registration is going to resolve that particular issue. Mr. Speaker, there is one or a couple of parts of it that I'm also confused, and maybe the member who presented the bill can assist in that regard. So if we go to, I think it's section 45, if I'm not mistaken. Client's money to be held on trust. It says a real estate broker or a real estate agent who receives client's money holds in trust for the beneficiary. A real estate broker or real estate agent shall not make client's money available for the payment of a debt or liability to any person other than the person for whom he or she holds the client's money in trust. If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Speaker, this seems to be something that already takes place with the lawyers. And there's a relationship between the lawyers and generally the lending organization, the bank. All of a sudden now, we are going to open ourselves up where who is going to regulate this money? Now I see there's a penalty that's put in place in case the persons don't do it. Who is the staff? Who is going to be determining where this money is? Now, we've already seen in the existing structure we have, and I don't mean to offend any lawyers, Mr. Speaker, my wife is also a lawyer, but we can't run away from what the truth is that there have been allegations where lawyers themselves who have been holding monies in trust or holding lands in trust have not necessarily acted in the most ethical way. And even with that community that's well established and licensed, we have not in any way or as far as I know, in any meaningful way, stamp that out. Now that we're going to broaden this and allow people like real estate agents, simply because they're licensed, to be able to hold people's money in trust is really, for me, very concerning, Mr. Speaker, and I think is going away from what the intent, I believe, that this is. I mean, if we're going to create a regulatory or a board that's going to provide regulations and license the real estate agents, I support that. But to get involved in what is already existing business, so when we talk about land, we have a land registry. In terms of valuations, more often than not, when people are purchasing land, there's expected to be a valuation. And we have a system of that. We have sometimes causes to doubt. I hear stories that when you are looking to get a mortgage of a land, the price of the land tends to be very high. When you have to come and sell the land because of its tax implications, the price of the land seems to go low for the same piece of land. But that's not for me to provide comment on. But I just believe, a member from Soufrière Fonsejac, that I think it's well intended, but I think it's going to open up a whole Pandora's box as to how you're going to be able to regulate these persons. And I think that we, in my own constituency, multiple of persons come to me with land issues. And I'm sure for all the members in the South or in more deprived areas, that we all face the same thing. And everybody, not everybody, a lot of people have some horror story of a name being wrong, there was no proper will that was put in place, and there are a lot of implications or problems with land. I think this is only going to further complicate it, because if in fact we're now saying to the general public it's an accepted norm to allow a person like a real estate agent to be able to hold your money in trust, are there going to be guidelines to say that the real estate agent has to hold a bond, as an example, in order, and the amount of money they're holding in trust can't exceed the bond? Because fact is, if they're found wanting, simply reprimanding the agent, I think it's a $10,000 fine that I read in here, is not sufficient, because the person's money is gone, their land is gone. And I think that we're going to create more chaos than necessary. So, Mr. Speaker, I think that there are elements...
Without any further interrupting you, may I? And when we go through this, it shall not be raised in this House again. There is a document transfer by Amazona Properties Limited to Orange Grove Plaza Limited, dated December 5th, 2022. It says, whereas the vendor is signed before Mark Mirage, Notary Royal, practicing between Amazona Properties Limited, represented by Director Francis Dembo and Benjamin Emmanuel, and for Amazona Properties, and Orange Grove Plaza, represented by its Director Blue Investments, Ramon Esper, PIF Corporate Services Incorporated, the purchaser. Whereas the vendor is desirous of developing the property and has for the purpose entered into that certain development agreement with the purchaser dated 27 February 2020, prior to the execution of this deed, hereinafter called the development agreement, witness as follows. In consideration of the sum of $5 million United States dollars, or $13,584,500 Eastern Caribbean dollars, paid by way of the mutual undertakings of the parties hereto as set forth in the development agreement, and the obligations of the purchaser as developer to the vendor, the adequacy whereof is hereby mutually accepted by both parties, the vendor hereby sells and conveys free and clear of all encumbrances unto the purchaser thereof, accepting the immovable property described in the first schedule hereto. First schedule. All that parcel of land situated at Bois d'Orange in the quarter of Grosley and registered in the land registry as block 1253B, parcel 888 in the registration quarter of Grosley, and it goes to give north, south, east, and west. Together with all the appurtenances and dependents thereof, including the building erected thereon. This is a dead issue. It's not going to go there again.
So, Mr. Speaker, and I know that you know the law.
No, I don't. I'm reading as a layperson. It says all the land and all buildings thereof for 13,000.
No,
Let's move on.
No, 13 million. And Mr. Speaker, it makes reference to the agreement. And therefore, it's in the agreement that it's described.
Member from Miku South, the issue is dead. The transfer deed says the land bordered XYZ and all buildings thereon. This was debated. I have brought this back to the House only for the record. It is not something I intend to do in the future. Once the House has ruled, the laws are very clear in the standing orders. We cannot re-litigate something that has already been litigated. So please move on, Member.
So, Mr. Speaker, I am going to stand up for what I believe is to be right. In the same lease that...
I shall not permit you to proceed.
But I'm going
and
to
if
proceed.
I'm going to have the officer remove you.
Then you do what you have to do, Mr. Speaker.
I will do what I have to do every time.
I will not allow you to misinterpret a legal document. It is clear that it speaks about the agreement. If
I've cut off his mic, let him talk. I just have you know you're not on the record, eh? So go ahead. Please go ahead.
what I'm saying here, I said it out publicly, and there's a documentation to substantiate it. The fact is in the agreement, and a reference to in that same agreement, it specifically says that the ground floor was being sold for the 13 million. And the agreement also talked about that they would now fix up the building, which they did. And the portion of the cost associated to us, which is by the square footage of the building and half of the public space, would be divided. So again, when the member from Cascades Southeast wanted to bring in and talk about this lease and everything else, there's a fixed lease. Now what I cannot believe is the lease is for $4 a square foot. How is it that the government would rent it land for $8.50, and I even hear some $9, and even in the case of the Halls of Justice was intending to go to $16 plus square foot. Have not seen it fit to move the government offices into the building. This idea of maintenance costs, it's your building. You have to maintain your share. All you did is you appointed a singular maintenance company. And the maintenance company works both for the landlord, the owner downstairs, and works for the government upstairs.
Is there somebody who wishes to speak because the member is not on the record? No, I have turned off the mic, sir.
That's what the situation is. That is what's going on. So come and tell me that the total building is sold for $13 million. That's disingenuous. I can't believe, Mr. Speaker, that you would find yourself involved in that. You don't know how, you're a person who's involved in this campaign. You don't know, you're a person who tried to study and have a lawyer for so long. So you know. I would imagine at least in all those attempts you would at least learn that. Come on. So, where do we go? We don't want to follow what the law is. We don't want to know what the truth is. You want to come here and try to say that you're the judge? Since when is the Speaker of the House the judge? Since when? I'm not a judge. You conduct the business of the House. You tell us what to do. But certainly I have my rights if I believe that what you're doing is infringing infringing on my
I've turned off the mics.
The two occasions previously, like the two occasions previously that we've gone to court, and since then, judge was moved, no judge on the case, but all the bills sit down and accept that. Accept the fact. Fourth issue, like our Constitution and our civil rights, that we were not allowed to do. How can it be a year and a half? No judge to continue the case. How does that happen? You want to go 5 years with me? I can speak to that. Not a problem. Speak about. What's the Constitution say? What if you all did? If you all came in and all said you all simply going to rectify the situation and make it clear, okay, that the government must appoint the deputy speaker of the House, I would accept the amendment. That's not what you did. You went and amended it to allow a deputy speaker to come from outside the House. After all the criticism, you want to talk about who's the hypocrite? Remember from Cassidy said, you are a hypocrite. And you continuously show that you're not right.
Call the clock, please.
Continuously. No, I said I have a friend that has all the similarities.
Ask Jojo to turn off the audio.
Nobody in the house wants to say anything.
Or whoever is up there. Because apparently
Mr. Speaker, I move that this House stand suspended.
Are you suspend or are you
until
close?
4:45.
Are you closing the debate? You may
No, I
want to
can't close
consider
the debate.
text
The
standing
House
order
stand
38.
suspended until 4:45. I'm not. This House stand suspended until 4:45 p.m.
Members, the question is that this House do stand suspended until 4:45. And now put the question, as many as that opinion say aye, as many of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it, the House is suspended until 4:45.